He promised not to spoil the cliffhanger ending of Dead Reckoning Part 1.
What was it you said in the intro? Is it so good that you can't miss it? What is it you said? I forgot already.
It is so good that you can't miss it. Yes.
It's so good that you can't miss it. And yet here I
He
sit
has.
having missed it.
Yes, I know. It's terrible. But
He'll be around.
It's only been out a week.
Yeah, don't worry, Si.
I mean, it's not even a week, I don't think. It's only been out since like Wednesday, isn't it?
I thought it was Monday. Anyway, open last week.
It's not been out long enough to worry about. So, yeah, you should really see it. I mean, we can tell you why, but I don't know whether we're going to get to that. We're going to talk about how Tom Cruise's Mission Impossible series, I mean, at least for me, it's pretty much the highest standard of ongoing franchise that I can think of. There's lots of great classic franchises out there.
Godzilla.
Yeah, very few of them have made it past like the second, maybe third movie, maintaining a real sense of quality and consistency. And I appreciate not everybody loved John Woo's Mission Impossible 2. I mean, aside from being the biggest box office hit of the year, I did. But Mission Impossible as a saga, I think, has at least since then gone from strength to strength.
That is fair to say.
Yeah, and it's hit a real, it's a sense of perfect companions in Tom Cruise and Christopher McQuarrie. They've, unlike all the previous Mission Impossibles, which are different directors and different styles, they've done the last 3 in a row, and they're doing the next one together. And they're a great partnership for the series. Dead Reckoning Part 1 is my favorite of all the Part 1s we've had this year. I do appreciate that Across the Spider-Verse is a tremendous movie. But for me, Dead Reckoning nails what you have to do to deliver a satisfying Part 1 without just pressing the pause button mid-scene and leaving everybody on tenterhooks for X amount of time, which, as we'll come on to no doubt in a bit, could be longer than we expected. Yeah, I mean, let's come on to it now. Yeah, I mean, it's supposed to come out next year. Part 2 is supposed to come out next year. And the recent actors' strike, I mean, to add on to all the other previous strikes we've had, means that everything's shut down, including this movie. Now, they have shot, I believe, about 40% of it, including all of the major set pieces for the final third, is what I read. What that means in terms of how much they can work on the material they have to get a finished product for effects-heavy action sequences, I don't know, because that will be the lag. Even if they shoot the rest of the film, putting that into post and getting a finished product out of it takes time. So if they've shot enough of the heavy stuff to be able to work on that whilst there's a delay, great. But already an 11-month follow-up for Part 2 was super optimistic. I think Anthony Hopkins from Mission Impossible 2 would have been grinning at the idea of this.
There's only one way forward from here, really, isn't it? And it's to go the unscripted route. So it's Dead Reckoning Part 2 is going to be half Mission Impossible, half Love Island.
It's Curb Your Enthusiasm type. Make it up as you go along.
It's exactly right. who needs any of that script stuff?
It's interesting. It's a Part 1, but it wasn't filmed concurrently with Part 2, and they've split them.
I think
a completely separate film.
Well, it's the third one, Part 1 we've had this year, and all of them at some stage or another were planned to be shot back to back. I mean, people have been talking about shooting films back to back for a while now, but I just don't think it's practical anymore.
Well, the other thing is, of course, it's COVID. You know, we're still dealing with COVID. Yes. So, you know, when all the naysayers are out talking about Dial of Destiny dying on its arse because of its massive budget, even this to some degree,
yes. It was stopped. It's 2020 movie.
what people are failing to realize is, those budgets were massively inflated because of COVID. The safety protocols, the delays, the renting stuff and then putting it on hold and re-renting, all that kind of stuff. And I think that's one thing which I've not seen an awful lot of in all of the commentary around at this time. About poor box office for, The Flash and all, you name it, poor box office, left, right, and center. Oh, it's the death of cinema. Everyone's had enough of franchises. Look, there's no money to be made anywhere. It's still COVID. We are still dealing with the impacts of COVID. And, I think to some degree that has come into these notions of the parts 1, the parts 2. Would they have shot back to back if it hadn't been a pandemic? Who knows? There might not have even been a part 1 or part 2 if it wasn't. Who knows? But I think that's, we can't overlook the lingering impacts of that, especially given the massive turnaround time on these VFX heavy blockbusters.
I mean, it's coming in at almost twice the budget of Fallout.
Yeah.
So there's no doubt that it's COVID that has seriously affected it. I mean, it'll be interesting to see what happens. The movie itself is a movie which really is for long-term Mission Impossible fans. If you've been on this voyage, since pretty much the third movie, they've managed to tie in strands, ongoing characters, character arcs, themes about Ethan's personal life and his wife and situations like that, which thread underneath the usual mission story. And that came to a head in Fallout to some extent, and it comes back again in Dead Reckoning Part 1. It's a very nice, fan service production from that respect. And if you've been on this, or if you've decided to catch up on all the Mission Impossible films before, I mean, I found it an immensely fun 2 hours, 43 minutes, I think. It's possibly the only one of all of the part 1s, only one of all of the long films I've seen this year, and they've all been long. It's the only one that didn't feel it. I actually felt it was propulsive, and it was well designed, and it knew when to take a breath without sapping momentum, when to inject a bit of humanity. Luther will say something that makes you just sit up and listen for a second, and then it throws you right back into the craziness. It knew how to do that, and it kept the momentum going in a way that few other movies this year have accomplished. It's also got, for me, a delightful wit to it, which wasn't present in Fallout because that was very grave. And I'm sure we'll return to that in part 2. But this had more of a fun part 4 or part 5 entry, a bit more like Rogue Nation, or the one before it by Brad Bird, Ghost Protocol. The sense of humor to it, even with the serious consequences, was nice. And there's a delightful Bond style car scene which is just played.
Why do you keep mentioning
Bond? I don't know. I don't know why I would draw that comparison when they get in this tiny little car and bum around. It's nothing at all like For Your Eyes Only. No. Yes. I mean, I thought it was a huge amount of fun, and I think I should say that Hayley Atwell was great in it. All of the new cast were great. I'm going to say that Hayley Atwell had a bit of concerns about how they were going to inject new characters into it, but they give her own personality and her own role, and she's on scene stealing form. Really enjoyed it. Gets a high recommendation, and don't expect it to be Fallout. It's lighter, it's longer, it's just a part 1 ultimately, however satisfying a part 1 it is, and it will need a really good part 2 to land this saga. But if it gets one, it'll be the best 2 entries of the series. And Mark's seen it. He's just come out of the cinema, walked straight into the podcast. Yeah. And
not quite.
He's gonna tell me how much he hates it.
No, not at all. I agree with you entirely. I mean, the thing for me, which beggars belief. So I've done all the films from 2 in the last week, all the way up to Fallout, to sort of get myself ready for this. And the immediate thought coming out of it was, how do Cruise and Macquarie do the same thing for the 3rd time running, and yet it feels like it's not the same thing for the 3rd time running? How do they do it? Mr. Hunt, should you choose to accept it, go get thingy A and take it to thingy B, but there's a double cross, and then thingy B becomes thingy C. You know, it's all the plots are all exactly the same. It's just a different world-ending threat. And there's huge set pieces that, you know, with tenuously linked. That's what the films are. But my God, you know, they've got the magic formula, and I don't know what it is. And if anyone else knew what the magic formula was, Hollywood will be better for it. But to me, I agree with you entirely. It was propulsive. The set pieces were great. They never hit the highs of, say, Fallout, but it was much more of a build up all the way through. Like you say, 2 hours 40 odd, you just didn't feel it whatsoever. I agree with you entirely about the new cast. I thought they were all huge fun. I was a little bit worried about the villain. Is it Morales?
Yeah.
I was a little bit worried. He seemed a little bit bland from the trailers that I'd seen, but actually the plot does some interesting things with him to just give him a little bit of an edge, and he doesn't quite seem to be as bland as you think he might be. I just had 2 slight worries. No, not worries, 2 slight issues with it, really. The first was it was very obviously a part 1. And so therefore, of all the MacGuffins that Mission Impossible have had, this was the most, for 95% of this entire film, they're chasing a key. And by their own admissions, they're like, we have no idea what this key does, but we're just going to chase it. And so therefore, it felt the most lightweight. I mean, granted, a rabbit's foot, a knock list, blimey, not a lot was done with these in the other films, but they felt more weighty. Here, I think, because obviously we've still got part 2 to understand how it all fits with this broad AI type thing, it felt lighter weight, and it felt much more like Ghost Protocol than Rogue Nation or Fallout, but it didn't have the sort of the links back, to bring it into the franchise that it had. So it felt a step back for that. And the other issue, I can't go into it because it was the spoilers, but I think there was one of our main characters' fates, shall we say, felt very unearned. And that'll have to stay spoilerific until everyone has seen it and we can talk about it. But I agree with you, Kaz. I thought it was great fun how they can make what is in essence, an action film that's all action with plot, which now that it's so meta, they're even admitting we don't know what we're doing, we don't know why we're chasing that, we don't know who wants it.
That's what I mean. I did like the humor to that. We're gonna do it. I mean, every time they talk about like what Ethan's plan is, and it's kind of we'll get to that when we're
we'll just do it
halfway through the air, about to land on something.
But Macquarie, Cruise, how they suck you in and basically give you everything that cinema is, even without all that stuff. We're programmed, it has to have a deeply complex narrative. It has to have, hugely multifaceted characters. There's none of that in this, but it doesn't matter because they've crafted that action template to within an inch of its life. And an absolute belting time in the cinema. Can't wait for part 2 in 2057.
Are you going to go and see it, Simon? Now we've sold it to you.
Oh, absolutely. I'm going to go right.
Oh, Simon.
I mean, it is. I feel for it a little bit because we got obviously Barbie and Oppenheimer coming up, and there's going to be a lot of competition.
Yeah, but you say that. So, in all honesty, I was shocked today. So I went to the first showing today at 12:10. I have never seen that cinema that busy, even on opening night on a Friday night for some of the most recent ones that we've had. It was heaving at 12 o'clock today with an audience that, let's just say, slightly older, not the kind of audience you would expect for hardcore action fest. So I think this is going to have legs, I think. And it's all because Cruise is out there, his face is everywhere. He's basically being nice to anyone who looks at him on any camera, any phone, wherever you look, it's look how great Tom Cruise is. Look at his work ethic, isn't it? And do you know what? People might mock it, but do you know what? It is working. It is working. That blanket saturation, working as hard to sell his film, and you can tell he wants to sell it.
And you can tell he likes cinema.
Works.
He really
that
wants.
Works.
Yeah.
It really does work, and I think we're going to see whatever this week's initial box office is. And I've seen some initial figures that says it's just about washed its face, I think, or is a little bit under its initial budget in its open week. I tell you what, I would not be surprised if the drop off in week 2 was way less than almost every other film we've seen this year. I think this has got legs.
Half term must help as well.
Yes, I hope. Well, summer holidays coming up. Yeah. I hope that. Well, I hope it does it. Not least because I want to see what happens.
Yeah, we better add.
Yeah, we'll have the Bruce Lee final cut of the last hour of Dead Reckoning Part 2 stitched together with a dubbed soundtrack.
Would watch.